just learning more about his incredible story. SJ, if you could tell us a little bit more about what you're doing
Yep.
At the moment with 120 seconds.
Yep.
What a platform.
Yep.
Tell us more about that.
Okay, first of all, Callum, I'd just like to acknowledge my past and my present ancestors. I'm actually a Yorta Yorta man down from Shepparton, so I'd just like to acknowledge that we're actually on stolen land. So thanks to all my brothers and my sisters, and also to AI Ventures as well too, so I appreciate it. So 120 seconds, yeah, wow. So this was born out of me having to pivot. I was actually a photojournalist with Al Jazeera for a number of years. I was based in all areas, from, I guess, Syria to Iraq to Hong Kong, just covering all these particular stories that were not nice. So for me, it was about having to pivot because of COVID, and I had this idea come to me in relation to that I wanted to tell good stories now. So for me, it was telling about, what's a good yarn and what's a good conversation. So instead of seeing the depravity of the human animal. So it's about, who you are. So where you started, where you're at, and where you're going to. So we want to try and capture that in 120 seconds. And there's a couple of people who have told me that, and also a couple of psychologists have told me that people really don't have a large attention span. So grab them in that 120 seconds, we can tell that story. So for me, that sounded like a bit of a challenge. And it also now has got me not having to travel back to the Middle East. There's we blew that place back into the Middle Ages. So for me now, it's about telling good stories and helping businesses out tell their story as well. So that's what this 120 is about.
How do you do that in 120 seconds? I look back, an average telephone call in business, for example, lasts about an hour. People are trying to, so for example, I read into Richard Branson. He talks about a 15-minute meeting. But it's very difficult to do that in 15 minutes. Anybody, who tries to do that. And you're trying to boil it down to 120 seconds. What's the magic trick?
I think the magic trick is to get to, first of all, we've got to, as either DAPs or even as producers and creative content guys, we've got to get to know who you are at first. So the first initial meeting is who is Callum? So now I've got a story in my head how I can storyboard it. So I'll storyboard it. And I want to get the stuff like, say, for instance, Callum came from, where were you born?
Yeah.
So you came from a certain area and what your childhood was like and what it was like and why you're doing what you're doing right now and all that. So now I have an understanding of who you are. So now I want to tell that first part of the story. And that's usually roughly around about 15 seconds. So we get that in the 15-second bit. So short, sharp, either B-roll, a bit of audio as well, and then we're getting that part. Then the next part of it is that where you're at right now, sitting in this podcast studio, why you started up this podcast, what it is, how you're going to impact other businesses. So we get that. That then now is about another 30 to 40 seconds. So we've got that. It's quick again. B-roll, short, punchy stuff, following around, good transitions, all that type of stuff. Then the last part of it is where, you want to take the business to. What is the future of the business? Then we're going to get that, and then we might get a couple of vox pops from other people that you've either inspired and worked with. That's 120 seconds, all done in that period of time. I just think the way we are right now as humans, we're always scrolling through, and it's if we don't grab them in the first 10 to 15 seconds, then they're off. So we've got to make sure that we get them in that particular period of time. And we've found with that, the one story that we've been writing on has been on domestic violence right now. And we've found also too now White Ribbon have reached out to us and said, well, can you do more 120 seconds for us as well? Because we need to get that message of domestic violence out there too. It hasn't been told correctly. So, and it seems to be working.
Yeah,
it seems to be working. So I'm pretty grateful for that, because I don't want to go back to what I was doing.
Yeah.
So yes, I'm really, really grateful and honoured that we can actually do this. And I think as new startups as well too, I'm speaking to a brother the other day about, I guess, startups, how did they tell their story, in that particular period of time. And we can sort of like unpack it for them to say, well, you do a pitch deck, right? Let's try and get your pitch deck told in 120 seconds who you are. Because 9 times out of 10, people will buy. You might not have a really great product, but 9 times out of 10, for me personally, I'd rather buy you than the product. So for me, I want to make you human. So I want to make the startup as a human, get that story told, punchy, who you are, and then people will buy that emotional stuff as well. And then they're going to know who Callum is, or who Sean is, or who the brothers are at the moment. And I think it's a great concept for startups to get that story short, sharp, to either either to an investor or another co-founder or someone like that as well too. Yeah. So that's I guess the idea about it.
Yeah. So one of the things, there are so many different incubators, accelerators, and there's plenty of advice to tell you how to tell that story in 3 minutes. I mean, it sounds like 3 minutes is that. Used to be the new normal, right? It was 5 minutes, and then it became 3 minutes. Every different pitch session you go to, it's 3 minutes. And now you're telling me about 120 second. How is that even different? And what do you think are the trade-offs in 120 second compared to the classic traditional
3 minutes?
The 3 minutes.
I think that if you can't tell your story in that 2 minute period, you might end up losing an investor, after maybe 2.5 minutes. So I think the trade-off is there that if you believe and you're passionate about your product or passionate about what your idea is, I really feel you can get that drilled into a 2 minute segment. 3 minutes, you're going to start to enter waffle in. There's going to start to be a lot of stuff that's white noise. So for me, I want to work with that startup to go, okay, let's really drill into why you're passionate about this. And we can get that passion in that 2 minutes. 3 minutes, you're just adding, fluff. So I think that, to me, with that extra minute, you might end up losing that particular individual. Because a lot of these, I guess, guys that are going to invest in a company, they're pretty, fast thinkers as well. They're always processing really quickly. So for me, I found that 2 minutes is the sweet spot. And if you even look at even some, I guess, series that are out there on Netflix at the moment, and 24 used to be a series of 40 minutes. They've now knocked it down to 20 minutes. They're even now talking about knocking it down to 5-minute episodes. So short, sharp, it's done. It's unfortunate, but that's the way that people are consuming content right now. And I think if we can get the startup to think about that mentality, short, sharp, punchy, And I think if you're passionate enough, you can tell your story in 2 minutes.
Yeah. And why 2, not 1, not 1.5? Why not, 90 second? I mean, there are a lot of conversations about 90. Why 120?
So again, too, it comes down to, we've been talking to a lot of psychologists as well too, and we've done some. I got a Cindy Pans, who's a really good psychologist, and she said that a lot of the time the mind starts to drift after 2.5 minutes. So I think 90 seconds, there's been a lot of concept around the 90-second mark, the 3 minute mark. 60 seconds, it's not long enough because now you're rushing. Your cadence is going. So you're virtually trying to tell a story and stay ahead of that wave in that 1 minute. So whereby with 2 minutes, it can be nice. It's virtually like an old Beatles song, boom, 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 done. So I think you can account it to, Let It Be or something like that. That was a 2 minute song. It's like, goes around that period of time. You're done. Again, to anything after 2.5 to 2:45, people are finding that they're drifting off. Yeah. So I think that's, we've done a little bit of homework in relation to the human, I guess, into the psychology behind it. But yeah, I think that if you are passionate, you can get it told in that period of time. 1 minute's not going to cut it. It's just not long enough. And as I said, 90 seconds is like, you're adding waffle in there now. Be clear in what your story is and that, and then you can get it in that period.
People struggle with a 3 minute.
Oh yeah.
And even to get a 3 minute pitch, people would have spent weeks and weeks, sometimes months and months. Sometimes it can take half a year, if not more, to pull it down to that something that's beautiful, succinct, and one that you can replicate and present again and again and again. How have you been able to crack that?
That's a good question, bros. I don't know if we've totally cracked it just yet, because being a startup, you're still trying to feel around, so I think we're just at that point right now where we're doing a lot of test things right now. So one of the test, I guess, 120s has been around the domestic violence. So we had to be really, really clear in how we're going to put that story, because that story that we've done with young Stacey is a big story. It's massive. It deserves longer than 2 minutes. But we had to sort of like use that as a test scenario. So we've been testing that, and the feedback that we've got from it, especially from organisations like White Ribbon and 1-800-RESPECT, has been really, really cool. They say it really hits that mark. So for me right now, that's been the test. Have I cracked it? Ask me in 6 months. But I think we're on the right path. I think we're definitely on the right path. And I guess with a lot of startups, do they know that they've cracked their product? And I asked that to a lot of other startups as well too, not just in the media space, but I guess in the computer space or in the app space and that. And they usually come with an idea and that, and to go, oh, have you cracked it yet? And it's like, oh, again, ask me in 6 months.
Yeah.
So we're doing all the right things, and again too, it's I don't want to say it's a suck it and see it, but I think this is a good road that we're on. We're currently also engaging with the Northern Beaches Council in relation to the Save the Fairies campaign. So we're trying to also get that message in 2 minutes. Again, too, B-roll, audio, short, sharp transitions, the music as well. We'll get people in. So we're pretty cool, because we're also working alongside guys like Hercules Studios and Fire Entertainment. And these are the places that recorded guys like ACDC and that. So we're working closely with those guys. So the music plays a role as well. So we're pretty clear of what's actually going to pull that person in, and how I'm going to get you to be able to sell your product as well. And then after that, it's up to you. So yeah. Have we cracked it? It's getting there.
So, I mean, you mentioned that you're also working with some startups, or you'd like to work with other startups as well. What would be an example of a journey that a startup would have to go through with yourselves to be able to produce something beautiful like this?
What will happen is that the first initial, sit down would be, I got to know who you are. I've got to really know who you are. I've got to know your psyche. I've got to know what your product is. We're going to be sitting down with a particular startup called 360 Buzz in the next couple of weeks. She runs an entertainment business. So the first initial meeting is that I need to understand who you are. I'm not going to be just your normal video content creator and just say, okay, we're going to put this and do this. I want to make sure I know that I'm getting the human. And once I know I've got the human, then I can tell that story for that particular individual. So that's the first initial point, is for me to sort of like sit down, have a bit of a yarn, know who you are, and then go, okay, we know now where we need to storyboard it. So then the next initial step will be, with my production team, my researcher, to storyboard that idea and to go, okay, this is what we need. This is how we're going to get it. We'll give ourselves a timeline. We'll give ourselves a timeline of 2 weeks. And within that 2-week period, we'll have that 120-second story. And again, too, with the Stacey one, that happened within, a week and a half, 2 weeks. We got to know her fairly well, what her story was, what needed to be told, what she wanted to get across to other particular females or any other person that's going through domestic violence. And her product now is escape bags. So now she's offering a service as well. So she's a startup. So now I got that story from her now to go, okay, so this is how she got into that space. So her escape bags now have gone from being in a back shed in Wollongong now into a major warehouse and going across the country, into police stations, going across into hospitals, getting sold into, other women's shelters and that. And she's left her other life behind, and that's all too because of the 120. So yeah, I really need to know who that individual is and why they're doing it. I mean, it can be, you know, really anything like a bottle. Why did you want to create the bottle in that? You know, I mean, I want to know that, you know, and that bottle's serving a purpose. You know, so what's the purpose? Tell me about the purpose, how you want that, what it's going to do, how it's going to change. It's not plastic, so no, straight away I know it's not going to affect the environment, so we'll pitch that story. So we're always thinking about what it is going to help them express why they got into that particular startup. And I think everyone gets into a startup because there is some passion there for them. I mean, again, too, it's like, you know, why do you do what you do? You know, I know for me, I do what I do because I love doing it, and I love to tell stories, and I love to be able to make an impact on the community. And I love to help people out as well. So if I can do that for people, yeah, well, you know, it's going to be a better world. So, yeah.
A lot of startups struggle to articulate many of those things, and you know, being able to. A lot of startups, I'm sure everybody gets into a business knowing why they got into the business. Some are able to articulate it, many are not. How are you able to bring that story out?
Good question. I think everyone at some stage, they can be really, really, I guess, reserved, or they can be, you know, really inward in themselves. For me, it's about being patient, and also too about, you know, just being open and honest with them. You know, sometimes I might share my story with them as well too. You know, I think by me sharing my story, and getting them to say that I'm not going to butcher your baby, you know, they'll start to talk about it. You'll find that they'll start to really, really, you know, come to light, and because they're passionate about it, you know. They do want someone to sit down and have a yarn to them and have a listen. And I can probably say that 9 times out of 10, you know, I've had people who have been really, really reserved, but at the end of, you know, a half an hour to a 40-minute conversation, you know, I can't shut them up, you know. So you've just got to sit there and be a listener and hold the space for them. And they will eventually, you know, tell you why they got into that particular product. I think people want to have that breathing space to be able to sit down and not be judged as well. You know, it's hard being a startup businessman. It's very, very difficult. And I think if there's another person who's willing to sit there and hold space for them, they'll tell the story. You know, and I think that's a little bit of experience I've had from being in the places I've been to. Like, I've had to sit down with elders, I've had to sit down with people who have had their houses blown up. You know, so I've had to hold space for them. And it's bloody difficult. So if I can get people who have just gone through hell and back to tell their yarn, I'm pretty sure I can get someone that's come up with a new application or a new app to tell their story as well. And a lot of people are going to ask, oh, is that going to be transferable? Are you going to be able to replicate that? You know, you can't pass it on. That's a skill set. You know, a lot of the people I look for, especially employees, is not someone like me, but someone who's empathetic, someone who wants to be a community activist as well, but someone who wants to seek the truth out and get them to be able to, you know, not judgmental, you know. And if I'm not judgmental, they'll tell the yarn. So yeah, I'm pretty confident that, and not being egotistical or by no means, pretty confident that I can get 9 times out of 10 people who want to have a bit of a sit down and have a yarn about what their product is or what their story is, because their story made their product. So yeah, that's how it'll be unpacked for them. You know, everyone's got a story, mate.
So speaking of stories, SJ, the stories you've told me, and this is over many weeks though, are just mind blowing, and you know, that was also my inspiration of just having you on the show as well. I'd just love for the audience to hear your story anywhere, and I'm happy for you to start anywhere, because I've heard different stories. I've heard about your knees, I've heard about your time in Afghan. Any one of those stories, incredible stories. So I'll let you tell that story.
I guess I'll start from the beginning. So I started off way back in the day when we were shooting on film, you know, with the likes of the Telegraph and that, and I worked in the radio room, so midnight to dawn. So we didn't have none of this technology. So I had no technology. All we had was a radio. It was a police scanner. So we used to be listening to the police scanners to see where the homicides were happening or where the break-and-enters were happening. So I started there, and then anyway, I was doing that job as these boys are doing as intern. So big up to you boys. Everyone's got to start as an intern. So I started as an intern. Well, we used to be called copy boys back then. We weren't called interns. So I was a copy boy, and I didn't like that name whatsoever. So anyway, one day, it was about 18 months into it, doing the midnight to dawn shift, which was just absolutely atrocious. One of the photojournalists didn't turn up. Got thrown a 1D. My first story was the back of the cross in Kellett Street was a homicide. So that was my first initiation into that side of it. And then from there I got put onto the photo team. And then 2 years after that, I'd done court reporting. Then 2 years after that, I ended up working for Al Jazeera and Associated Press on the back end of the war. So I was doing that in Iraq and then also Afghanistan. And then probably about, into it. So I've been doing that now, God, for a long, long time, about 26 years now. And then about 3 years ago now that I was in Kandahar, and there was an IUD, like the small improvised devices. We were supposed to be telling a story in relation to Medicine Frontier about how the villages had been cleaned up, and they hadn't been cleaned up. One of the French-Canadian boys tripped a wire, and one of those improvised explosives blew outwards and tore my patella tendon off. And I went down like the proverbial. And next thing you know, I was in the back of a troop carrier in the UAE to get my knee stitched back. I can't remember anything else after that. So that's one of them. There's many more, but that's just one of them. But that taught me as well too that this life is just too precious, mate. It's just too precious. So, yeah, it's like you got to make sure that you live every single day like it's your last day, so to speak. Not in a bad way, but just enjoy it, And yeah, so I ended up with my last assignment now. We go now a couple of years now forward now to Hong Kong, the riots in Hong Kong. So I was there like in May for the majority of 2019 with all the unrest that was happening in Hong Kong. In the beginning, they had the Million Man March and all that, so we covered that. But then we started to hear, the language of the police force go from, Cantonese to Mandarin, and then you're thinking, this is not right. Then you knew straight away that the CCP were there, and stuff was going to go more south, and it did. It went up going more south in at Poly University, and that's when my tooth got knocked out. So yeah, I got a butt of a gun by one of the coppers, and yeah, that's when I went, you know what, I can't do this anymore. I'm too old. So then all of a sudden COVID came, and I don't like to say that too loud, but that was a blessing for me, just quietly. And I know a lot of people are going through a bit of a hard time right now, but for me, I guess the universe was saying, "No, you're done. That's it." And here I am now in a podcast with AR Ventures. Who would have thought? Yeah, so that's where it's gone to. Yeah, but for me now, it's just about trying to tell good stories, mate. Proper good stories about how people want to change the world. And I guess a lot of startups get into their business because they do want to change. They want to make an impact. They want to leave a legacy. So I'm all up for helping startups that want to leave legacies and be change makers. So I'm really, really determined to work with people like that. So yeah.
So tell us, the time when you said, well, it's time to change. It's time to do something different. And you had an inspiration for 120 seconds. What was that journey like? And let's unpack that a little bit. How did it happen? I mean, was it just one day you woke up and said, you know what, this is it? Or, I mean, what was that journey like? Tell us more about that part of that.
Yeah, good question. I've never worked for myself. Never ever. I've always worked for someone to tell me what to do. So I've always worked for an employer. I guess what it was like I didn't have anyone to work for. I had no job anymore. You know, was I going to get drive Ubers around, or was I going to flip hamburgers? Which is no offense to anyone or anything like that. But I've always been very, very passionate about either creating and a story. So I had to really think about how can I keep what I'm doing alive. So I reached out to an organisation just before COVID really, really blew up, I think in March last year. And there's an organisation called Turbans for Australia. And I said to them, you know, listen, I think what you guys are doing, they were the first organisation to run hay from down here all the way up north into the droughts and that. And I was watching what they were doing, and I thought, you know, you guys the story needs to be told at a bigger level. So I said, I follow you guys around and just shadow you guys and just, take stills of you guys and that. So I was doing that for a month. And then I was just having conversations with other guys within my game and that. And it just come to me, and I thought, okay, the stills are great. The stills are awesome because it's a bit like telling the story of what happened with the Spanish flu. What happened then, we still look at, and we forgot what happened through the Spanish flu. We completely forgot. Everything about the Spanish flu is very, very similar to what's actually happening right now. So for me, I thought, okay, yeah, I can still do the stills, but I need to be able to tell this through, some form of a documentary. So anyway, we kept on talking to each other about it, back and forth. We kept on, following them around. We went down to Wollongong University. We talked to some of the international students and that and what they were going through, the plight, what was happening for them. They were getting nothing. They were virtually getting nothing. And at that particular stage as well too, they were trying to get money from their parents back home. That wasn't coming through. So a lot of them weren't getting support from the government. So then Turbans for Australia sort of helped them out as well too, all those students and that. I thought this story's got to be told, because everyone sees you with a turban on your head and they don't accept you as an Australian or anything like that as well too. So I wanted to break that barrier down too, to go, these guys are actually just as Australian as what, Joe down the pub is. But you only see the turban. I want you to see that person. So for me, I thought, I can do this. So we kept on having these conversations, and I thought, you know what, as well too, and I was seeing the way that stuff like Instagram was going in a way I guess, what is it called, that Chinese platform, sorry.
WeChat.
WeChat or
Weibo.
What was that one called? Snapchat, not Snapchat. TikTok.
TikTok.
Yeah, the brother's got a TikTok. Yeah, boom, TikTok. So anyway,
that would have been a good TikTok.
So anyway, I thought, you know what? And then I started to speak to a psychologist and that, and I was asking her about, why the rise of platforms like TikTok were happening. And then she said, well, attention span. A pure and simple attention span. Nothing else than just that. And I thought, I threw some ideas back at her, and she went, like I was telling you before, 90 seconds, the 3-minute mark, this minute mark. And anyway, I woke up in the middle of the night, and I went 120 seconds. So anyway, I was on the phone to the sister the next day, and I'm going, what about 120 seconds? She said, yeah, that's the sweet spot. That's where that was born from. There wasn't nothing scientific about it. It was some science behind it, but it wasn't it was just it just came. It's 120 seconds. And it's a good catch line too, I think. 120 seconds, you and your story, that's 120 seconds. So, that came from that idea. So we've been slowly working on that, As I said, we've done a couple now. We put the first Turbans for Australia into 120 seconds. That eventually will be stretched out to, either a 4-part documentary series that we're just waiting on funding for. Because, again, that story needs to be told. The same, too, now with Stacey's conversation with domestic violence. Okay, it's 120 seconds, but, again, too, we want to be able to get that out. So that's also being used as a pitch reel right now to organisations that might have a little bit of cash floating around. So we're going to go, that's virtually her pitch reel, so to speak, the same with Turbans. And even in the music industry as well, too, I've had some of the musos reach out to me as well, too, can you put a pitch reel? It's like an actor or something like that wants to, their pitch reel and that. So I'm thinking startups can use this as well. What's the difference between, either Stacey or Armoire or an actor or a rock star, Let's see if we can use this in the startup world, So why did you start this? What is the story behind, Callum or Sean or whatever, to go, okay, boom, boom, this is how his journey was. We've got that part, then we've got the end part. It's not a fade to black, because the story continues. It's just to go, okay, you want to be involved in this product, this is what it is. So, yeah, that's really where it wasn't a hard conception or a hard birth, like a lot of, I guess, startups have. It was just not an easy one, but it felt right, So yeah, so that's where that was born from.
But born during the COVID. This is a COVID baby.
Yeah, it's a COVID baby, mate. Far out. Yeah, well, it's certainly going to be remembered as that. So, as they say, with sometimes darkness comes light. So, yeah, and I know there's people doing it tough out there and that, too, So I never want to, wave the flag going, I've done this through this particular this particular period. But yeah, and it is difficult for people out there, and I also want to capture that side of it too, bros. I want to capture that side for startups because it is bloody hard. It is really, really difficult as a new business, and especially if you're going through a pandemic, you don't need that as well too. So, hopefully a 120-second story can take a little bit of pressure off you trying to pitch your business to either investors or other co-founders. So hopefully we can take a little bit of that pressure off by you telling that story. Yeah.
So in terms of being able to tell a story for turbans, for example, compared to say a startup, how easy it is or difficult it is to do startups compared to some of the other stories?
I don't think there's too much. I think there's a lot of similarities as well too, I think the only difference is because, okay, they're helping people. But the thing is, as a startup, you're also helping people as well too. You're also doing it. Okay, you have an idea, and I know that, eventually you want to make sure that you have a comfortable existence and a comfortable life at the end. But your product or your startup business will change the world. It could be like a Steve Jobs story, like when Jobs started to where his Apple is. Who would have thought that a product like that started off in the back shed, to where it is now? I mean, that's a great. But he had passion about that. He knew he had passion, he had drive, he had direction. So we're going to capture that for that particular startup. Your passion, your drive, and your direction. So you get that going. And again, it's the same similarities, but because turbans are helping, you're also helping as well too. So there's a lot of correlation there. So yeah, I think I know that it can be actually told in that particular type of script format. Yeah.
As a startup yourself, what are some of the challenges that you've faced? I mean, the idea that you have is brilliant. Like, I'm sold. I wish I could do one as well.
Well, I'm going to do 120 seconds on you, mate. I'm offering you right now that we're going to do his 120 seconds.
Yeah, I'm in, man.
All right, let's do it. Let's rock and roll.
I forgot what I was going to say because I'm blown away.
No. So this is the thing, right? This is the thing. Everyone has a story, bro. Yeah. Everyone has a story. Everyone has a story that deserves to be told.
Yeah.
I don't care what background you come from, but everyone has a story. And me as that conduit wants to be able to help you tell that story. It's a bit like the old people in that. You sit around a circle and that, and you talk about the story in that. And when I tell people, like I want to tell their story, I go, why? I say, you have a story. You have a story. You have a story. Let's tell the story. And like for you, I'm just going to use you, and I don't want to embarrass you or anything. For you right now, you're helping these brothers and sisters, further their career, getting them a leg up in that. And that's too like how Contrast Media came into fruition. I wanted to be able to help young refugees. I've got 2 refugees now who are just insanely awesome, they would not have an opportunity to be able to get into mainstream media because 85% of the media is Anglo-based. So for me, that was another reason why contrast media came into fruition as well, is to help those brothers and sisters out to get them in. What you're doing right now for these brothers and these sisters, you're doing the same thing. So that's a story, man. You know, and I ask people, why did you do it? You know, and the simple thing is because you want to help people. You want to help people. You asked me to come on your show because you know that you want to help people. So there's a story in that. And it's the same with businesses out there. You know, it's the same with either people who want to do investment or whatever like that. You still want to help people, you know, better themselves, but also give them a comfortable life. That's helping people, you know. And I think we have this whole thing around, you know, businesses and that, oh, well, it's not like the Turbans mob or it's not like Stacey or anything like that. No, it is, you know, because you got into it because you want to help. You didn't get into it, you know, you could go and be, you know, I don't know, a bookmaker or something like that, I don't know, you know, or go and, you know, sell beer or, you know, crack on the corner of, you know, a road or something like that, you know. Are you helping people? Not really, no, but what you're doing right now is empowering people now. That's a story, you know. It's like there was another, when I went through the founders program, I got to speak to some really, really great founders in that. You know, and some of their stories have blew me away, you know, why they're doing one particular, Jesse, you know, with the app, you know, the payment app, or how organisations were ripping their staff off, you know, because, you know, and I'm going, dude, man, that's an incredible story. Now you're going to be making sure that these guys, when they go to work, that they know they're going to be paid what they deserve to be paid. And you've created that app so this can work for them. That's going to change lives. So now that is very, very similar to what Turbans are doing. You know, they're changing people's lives. Might not be a product or anything like that, but they have a community behind them that are willing to go into the kitchen and cook stuff, get the meals out and that. It's the same with Jesse now, developing the app, getting that to other people, and also too with online concerts. There's another particular sister that I'll speak to next week in relation to how she's getting now. Bands haven't been able to play in pubs and clubs, you know, for the last year. But now she's developing an online platform that can allow those bands now to get their message out. That's the story. So she's changing the band's, you know, way of doing things now. So every business has some type of heartfelt story. And that's my mission. That's my mission is to get that out of them and then tell, you know, why you're doing it. You're changing lives, man. End of the day, you've changed these guys' lives. You know, and I would put the challenge to any business or any startup that is out there right now to go, you know, if the first question I ask, you've done this for, and they go, oh, cool, I want to make a difference. So, you know, let's make a difference. Let's tell your 120-second story. You know, and then I would probably, not guarantee, but I would probably sure as the sun comes up that someone out there who has, you know, a little bit of assistance for them will go, oh, okay, I like that brother, sister's business. How do I get involved? And hopefully the 120-second will be that piece that knocks that wall over for them. So I want to do your 120.
Yeah, I mean.
I want to do your 120. You know, it's, yeah, again, everyone has a story to tell. And what people have been going through, you know, hell on a stick. It's been absolute hell on a stick. And as a new startup as well too, man, I feel every brother and sister's pain because, you know, and if it wasn't communities like this community that I'm in, that's one of the reasons why I came into this program, because it's very, very supportive. You know, there's a lot of other businesses that you can go into are very much a dog with a bone. You know, they'll hold on to that bone and that, and then they won't want to sit and have a conversation or a yarn with you and that, and share their wealth and their knowledge and that. I think that there in itself is also, you know, very, very powerful for new startups. You know, I needed that assistance. You know, I needed that help, you know, from the studio and that. You know, if I didn't get that assistance, I don't know where I would be right now. And that's the God's honest. I really don't know where I would be. So, if you are a startup, man, make sure that you hook into communities like this. You know, because I think a lot of people like yourselves and the brothers and sisters in the room right now want to help other people, mate. You know, and if we had more people like you, Mob, you know, we'd be in a much better space. So I'm grateful that you asked me to come on this show, you know. So for me, it's going, you know, if you're out there, you're struggling or you're battling in that, man, reach out to these communities. You know, these business communities, you know, will give you that extra bit of go in your step. Because it is tough. It's bloody tough. It's not easy. It is tough. Because you don't know where your next dime's coming from. You know, and there's been days that I've had to eat 2-minute noodles. I'm not going to lie. There has been days that I've had to do that, but now we're starting to come up to the precipice, you know, of going, okay, we're doing okay, you know, but it would be great to get an A client, you know. So, yeah, that's where it's at. So
I mean, we've been very thankful to the studio as well. You know, being a beneficiary to the studio and given the studio is a non-profit organization as well. And the whole building and the support of New South Wales government, you know, as to where we are, with the benefits we get, to be able to afford some of the things that we do and access to technology. A lot of people don't understand that. I would just love to, you know, appreciate and thank the studio, but I'd love to hear from you how you're benefiting.
Oh man, as you said, bros, it's I can't express my gratitude. I really cannot express what the opportunity was for me and also my team to be in this space has been. Because if I didn't have that support in the beginning through the Founders Program and hear these speakers come in and that, I didn't know how to run a business, and I'm still feeling my way through it. But I know that at least, you know, if I see the auntie in the kitchen and that, or if I see, you know, either yourself or I see other people, I met Raz through being in here as well. You know, he sat down and gave his time yesterday for an hour of his time. You know, what other person does that without looking for a return? It's unheard of. So for me, man, it's like far out. You get old and cynical really, really quickly, especially what I was doing in that. But all of a sudden, realizing that there are people out there who are willing to actually give their time without me going, what are you after? You know, for me, that's been really, really deadly. It's been really, really cool. So, man, thank you, and thank you to the studio. You know, it is tough. It is tough. But again, too, I really employ people. You know, if you're looking to get your business up and running, if you're looking that you have an idea, go with the idea, because you don't want to die with regret. You don't want to pass away with regret. You don't want to be there in your last breath going, only if. Reach out to communities like this, you know. Be open. Take the advice, you know, because, you know, the biggest thing is to be able to sit there and go, you know what, take it from the leaders and the experts who have done it before. Again, everyone needs a mentor, mate. Everyone needs a mentor. It's like a coach.
So I think being in the physical space, like I know we continue to have this yo-yo in terms of this COVID, you know, COVID on, COVID off, and it continues to stress our ability to, you know, think whether we come into the office or not. My favorite part of being in this building and being part of the studio and the community is the 4:30s on Fridays, and I know you and I have connected at 4:30s, and for me that's the most memorable part amongst everything else. Is the 4:30 community on Friday that I'm missing at the moment, especially this week, I guess, with COVID and whatnot. What are some of your highlights of physically being here?
You said that in a nutshell, mate. I mean, the 4:30s are great because then you get to unwind, but you know, you get to still network. You know, I think that's really, I mean, as human beings and human species, we're meant to be amongst the tribe and the clan and the mob or whatever you want to call it. We're meant to be sociable. And I think, by being here at 4:30, that's also been very, very helpful. So yeah.
Yeah. And in terms of some of the what the studio offers as well, in terms of the equipment and the massive investment, obviously, in terms of the infrastructure that we have there. People don't know about that,
Oh,
and how are able to take advantage of some of these
Lord.
platforms.
Oh Lord. Hallelujah. And that's all I'll say is hallelujah, because the thing is, like, now if I was to go set something like this up, man, you'd have to call me Ned Kelly. Because, I would not be able to afford this. Not in a heartbeat. I mean, we had the Deputy Lord Mayor yesterday in here with the Save the Ferry campaign and that, and she walked into the green screen studio and went, "You got access to this?" And I said, "Yeah, I have access to this." She goes, "This is like a TV studio." And I said, "This is what we wanted." I can't afford that in a normal world, man. I cannot afford that. Do I want to be out there in the normal world eventually having my own studio space? Maybe. But I also do like being around, guys like yourself and the brothers and sisters in here. So for me, that's also too really, really, really paramount. That's the extra thing that you don't see. The equipment in here is second to none, man. The green screen studio, the podcast studio, the OB center, the meeting rooms. It's great. It's really, really fabulous. So again, I couldn't afford it, man. Seriously, I couldn't. I'd be working out of a community centre. With gear that you have to tape together with duct tape. So no, it's good. It's good. So yeah.
So I'm just getting the signal. We're coming to the top of the hour. I mean, I lost track of time. Seriously, I can't even believe that that's the case.
Yeah.
Are there questions coming in from the audience that we should be asking?
Yep. So we have a question, and before we wrap up, we'll shoot out this question. And the question is, what do you see as the future for film and video industry in Australia?
Wow, good question. Well, we're seeing the American movie industry moving onshore into Australia right now with, places like Albury and Wagga and all that. I think it's pretty bright. There was some money that was taken out by the government, and I'm not political by no means or anything like that, but it was taken out arts and funding and that. But there is a big opportunity now for young filmmakers. I've just been asked now to work on a horror movie called Karma as a DOP, and they've been granted $2.5 million to start off to get this off the ground. So if you're a young filmmaker, yeah, there's definitely opportunity. And for video, I think that's how they're going to be consuming. We spoke to some people in relation to their newsletters and that. There's even other concepts as well too, of video newsletters. Even the video newsletter can be done in 120 seconds. So what did your business do in that 120 seconds and that? So I think video content right now is at the top of the tree for any type of content. But as a young filmmaker, I think go out to places like Afters or come into these guys here, and sit down and have a yarn to these blokes, or sit down and have a yarn to us about, either co-collaborating in that. But the film industry in Australia, I think it has a really, really bright future because no one wants to go do films in America right now. So, I mean, they just finished, Marvel just finished off that Wang Tang, I think the Marvel movie now was just finished now in Albury. And now Marvel have also said that they're going to be doing a lot more out in Australia too now. So yeah, if you're a young filmmaker, you're a young doco maker, believe in it, go with it, man, and pick the camera up and shoot every day. Pick it up every day and shoot the shit out of it. So yeah, no, that's what's going down.
Over to you, Callum.
Awesome. Well, Sean, SJ, thank you so much. I mean, that was just incredible. Thank you so much for just being on the show. I mean, if there is anything I can do, and thank you for your offer as well. And guys, I mean, he's just such an amazing guy right here. And please reach out to to Sean. I mean, Sean, what's the best way to reach out to you?
Okay, so our Facebook page is Contrast Media. Just look that up. Our webpage is contrastmedia.com.au. We've just also got up our 120 seconds, so it's just 120.s, and just reach out that way. So our Instagram handles the same as well too, Contrast Media and also 120. And anyone that wants their 120 story told, please, let's sit down and have a beer or a coffee, whatever your choice of poison is.
Awesome. With that, thank you very much. That's the close of the Friday hour for Sydney Startup Show. I wish we're going to go right after this and grab a beer. That's not happening today, I understand, but
bugger.
we'll figure that out. Anyway, thanks, guys, for tuning in. Please drop in the notes below or your comments below, and look forward to seeing you next week.